When I think of Capcom, I usually think of the days when I used to play MVC3 Ultimate on my PS3, picking the same characters as always, Spider-Man, Zero, and Okami, and just button mashing my way to Galactus, which was the typical way that I would go throughout fighting games. This kind of led me to falling in love with the Mega Man series when actually Mega Man X used to be placed on the App Store. I remember playing that all throughout middle school. I remember even Mega Man 11 coming out and that being a huge deal to me because I just fell in love with the character through playing Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I even remember seeing Devil May Cry 3 on my PS3, but the demo version, but my parents always told me not to play it because it obviously had like, extreme stuff. Devil May Cry is Devil May Cry. And then leading to my experience with Resident Evil 7, and actually, so quick story about this. I actually got Resident Evil 7 for the PlayStation VR, and this was back in 2017 when the game first came out. And I remember this game scaring the absolute shit out of me because of that VR experience, getting that first person experience. And it was just really scary. It was so scary to the point where I didn't even finish the game until high school. And it's funny because now all I do is just speed run those games or try to finish them as quickly as possible. Not because I hate them or not because I want to finish them as soon as possible. Just because of the fact that I just know what to do now. And then lastly, following to today, to the absolute bonkers gaming icon that we know now as Capcom. Capcom recently put out two bangers, and just overall just a great company in general. They were just bringing out banger after banger after banger, and with their two most recent ones being one of them Resident Evil Requiem and Pragmata being released only a few days ago. This is what generally people call Cap God. That's kind of like the term that everybody's using nowadays, and it kind of encapsulates what Capcom really is today. Just a real dominator in the gaming industry, setting a new standard to what gaming should feel like and be like on a consistent basis, which Capcom already has that locked in, man. How's it going, guys? My name is Yana. Here on the channel, we talk about any and everything gaming that I personally like. And today we're talking about Capcom. I'm going to be giving a brief history on Capcom, so we're going to be briefly analyzing what Capcom did back in the day to the comeback story and just kind of where they are today. I really want to focus on the strategizing process of how they managed to launch Resident Evil 9 because I personally find that to be one of the best displays of how Capcom can really just strategically bring out a game and have it be a banger at that, with Resident Evil 9 selling 5 million copies within the first 5 days of launch, which is insane. This company in general is probably one of the most influential companies I've ever seen in my entire life. If I ever got the chance to work with them, I would absolutely love to. I love this company. I don't think anything really displays how much I love this company. So much so that if anybody from Capcom is watching, okay, I got two things. I got two versions of Resident Evil Requiem, okay? The PS5 and the Nintendo Switch 2, which was the last copy, by the way. This is the last copy. Okay, I pre-ordered the PS5 version, which got me the Apocalypse outfit. And hold on. I even got two sealed copies of Resident Evil Village. I don't even know why I have these. I still have the main copy from the day that it launched. I got these because I thought that I wasn't gonna get the other ones in time, and so I wanted to pre-order two of them, and I think I spent all of my allowance money on it. But yes, two sealed. I don't know if you guys can. That's sealed. But first, let's get into the late 2010s. We're going to be talking about Capcom when they weren't really in the best spot, but then leading up to when they made that comeback with Resident Evil 7. So Capcom generally in the early 2010s was more so identified as a company that was not very clear with their vision. A lot of the time Capcom was at the time seemed to be doing things that were more applicable in the West. And what I mean by that is basically, let's put it like this. If there was a COD game, most likely a Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 6, was likely to copy that. So any other game that was released in the West, they kind of wanted to copy that kind of formula and style of it, which I can see why people would kind of get upset over that, just because at the time I'm sure Capcom was kind of still making their way up, surely, slowly but surely. And the company was known to making quality fighting games, Resident Evil games, Monster Hunter at the time, which wasn't generally big over here, but it was over there. And I'm assuming that they really wanted to bring it over here and make it big, right? And even doing research, a lot of the time when they were doing a lot of these Western kind of influential games, it more so came out as like anti-consumer with games like Street Fighter 4 and its multiple versions of it not really getting upgrade paths. And I heard even Marvel vs. Capcom 3 getting the ultimate version, the one that I played, I think you actually had to buy that game completely separately, which wasn't really the best move. And like I said, even just turning their back on the formula that made Resident Evil Resident Evil. So with Resident Evil 6, that was just completely bonkers. And a lot of the time, people looked at that game as almost like the black sheep of the entire series, which is crazy to think about because they went from Resident Evil 4 to being one of the greatest games of all time to Resident Evil 5 being the second one. And then obviously Resident Evil 6 just kind of tumbled it down. It made good sales, but it wasn't what Capcom really wanted, or the fans by that matter either. And at the time, I wasn't really aware of this. Obviously, I was a very young kid. During the 2010s, I would say I was just mainly focusing on school. I mean, I had a rough time kind of growing up with just like my parents being divorced, and it was definitely a tough time. Gaming definitely took me out of that area, especially Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Mega Man, and the like. All of those games kind of helped me get out of what the world brought to me at the time. And it was pretty clear that even at that time as well, Capcom just needed to shift something. They needed something to kind of bring them back up and get that edge to them and to basically bring them back to what they are now. And obviously that's something being Resident Evil 7. Something definitely changed with that one. Resident Evil 7 was probably, I actually would say it's the thing, and I think it's just undoubtedly the thing that turned around Capcom with the Resident Evil engine. I always say that, Resident Evil engine, RE engine. But they ended up changing that, the entire scope of the company just with Resident Evil 7. I'm pretty sure the company was kind of flailing a little bit. They were kind of, they needed something very clear. They needed a vision that was clear, stating, we basically need quality games and we need them to come out consistently. How do we do this? This kind of led to the RE engine being built in-house and creating what we know now, Resident Evil 7. And that engine is now being used by the company just practically forever now. They're basically going to use that engine forever until they end up breaking that boundary and bringing on a new engine that probably outdoes that one. This kind of leads us to the late 2010s. So we're talking, I would say 2017. I remember it was a very cold winter in New York City. At the time I was living in Brooklyn, and my parents had actually got me a PlayStation VR. Now, for those who don't know, the PlayStation VR was actually bundled with Resident Evil 7 at the time. And I knew nothing about this series until that very moment. So I would actually try to creep into my parents' like closet and I would try to peek because I knew something was in there and I saw it. I remember sinking in there and I saw like the bundle. It was like a big white box with Resident Evil 7 on there and the PlayStation VR and the box was mainly white, but you had like that blue sliver on the top of the PlayStation 4. You had like the kind of mix into the Resident Evil 7 atmosphere with the house and somebody standing in front. Oh my God, it was just so cool, man. I remember that. And it's funny because I did all that just to not play the game until years later in high school. I remember playing that game and it literally like I must have shit my pants like a couple of times. And clearly as this worked out for me in terms of being scared, this worked out for plenty of people. Resident Evil 7 got released in 2017 and the world just absolutely took it in. I mean, dude, you had people from content creators, playable demos. It's basically what you see with Resident Evil 9 now, but I think a little bit more extreme just because they really wanted to add that push. I personally never saw any advertisement at the time. I was more so into like other games. It was really only until this game that I really got into the Resident Evil series. And I just remember after years coming back to this game and actually finishing it, I remember a lot of the time I would just see like a whole bunch of like people play this game so much. It was an actual amazing game, and it's definitely what turned it. We have to thank this game for turning around Capcom 100%. And then with that, Capcom just kind of understood the assignment. I mean, they went from making bad anti-consumer choices to really just turning around and coming to their senses that we don't always need to follow what other people are doing. We can make quality games in-house and we can make it good. The comeback I remember especially was in it was intact when RE2 remake came out. When RE2 remake came out, I remember that game being huge. I didn't understand. I was watching a live stream of I believe this was at E3 or whatever the case may be. RE2 got revealed and a lot of people went crazy. I never knew anything about this. I never played any of the original Resident Evil games, but Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 2 remake kind of installed that era of Capcom where they were making a difference in the gaming industry. I remember especially with RE2 remake, I just played the hell out of that game. There were so many moments where I would finish the game and then you would just jump back into it. I'm assuming that's what a lot of Resident Evil fans do. They just immediately finish the game and then they just jump back into it. That's what I loved about RE2 remake. That was the one thing that I remember from that game, and it was that just like how much content that game had, and you were able to just jump back in. Now, I never played any of the Monster Hunter games. I always knew that they were a thing, especially with Monster Hunter Rise kind of coming out, I think around that time. I never played any of them, but I just knew that it was a pretty, it had a good fan base. I wasn't a big fan of it. I knew that Resident Evil, very streamlined. You kind of go through a very simplistic story. You can kind of hold on to that and you kind of know what's going on very easily. And then it was just so easy to get into the other parts of the series just because they were making more remakes, and not to mention they were putting the other games on sale. So just to kind of wrap that up, Resident Evil 2 just kind of wrapped up what a remake should be, right? All the way from Resident Evil 1 remake, the original 1 remake on the GameCube, all the way until now onto like the modern platforms of Resident Evil 2 with the older over-the-shoulder gameplay. And it just really got everybody in it. That's when you knew that everybody got into Resident Evil. And the funny part is that they didn't even use this as like a cash grab. A lot of the time when you think about remakes, you mainly think of like cash grabs of like nostalgia, but this wasn't it. This had care into it, and you can tell. So obviously Capcom was feeling pretty good about this one, obviously because they had stupid amount of money after that, especially with a little bit of a dip with Resident Evil 3. Things happen, but obviously they made it back up with things like, again, Monster Hunter and then Street Fighter 6. I remember that one being very, very good. But the next thing that really got to me was this game. So it wasn't just Street Fighter 6, it was this game, Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village, if I had to really... I remember going through tough times during this era of my life. I remember I was going through pretty bad things in terms of a relationship at the time, and to me, it obviously it meant that I had some tough nights. And I just remember Resident Evil Village just kind of being there for me, and just in general the Resident Evil series. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this entire video. It's like Resident Evil as a whole. I understand that Capcom is not Resident Evil as a whole. There are other series that kind of put it together, but this series alone made me go through tough times. And RE Village was just kind of that game, although it wasn't perfect at all. I love this game. I remember it coming from a very tough time, and that's for like a whole different video, but I just remember RE Village just kind of helping me through those tough times. And then now, of course, that leads us to 2026, which Capcom already knows. They're in their best, they're in their best interest here. This is where Capcom is fully established. They already know. They already have the sauce. They have the formula to what it is that makes quality and fun games at a consistent rate. This era of Capcom to me is mainly represented by Resident Evil Requiem. I remember the lead up to this game, all the hype, all the media coverage, all the interviews, all of the playable demos, and unfortunately we didn't get any demos at home, but that's okay. This game had a very strategic announcement, and this is kind of like the core of the video here. I wanted to talk about the strategic and just the amount of effort that Capcom put into this era of Resident Evil, as we knew that this one was going to be a little bit more serious, a little bit more oomph into it compared to the other ones. I remember there was a short film also with this. I have it here. It's Evil Always Had a Name. And I just remember watching that video on my way to class, and I was like, why don't they make Resident Evil movies like this? Like, no shame to Zach Kreger. He's making the new Resident Evil movie, but Capcom, I need that type of quality when it comes to the new Resident Evil movies. Hopefully Zach Kreger can do it, but we'll kind of see what happens. I remember a lot of content creators also getting like early copies of this game, reviewing it, playing it, and just having fun with it in general. And it was like a very fun time because you always had a consistent line of content coming up from content creators just talking about Resident Evil Requiem. And I even remember the Nintendo Switch 2 version getting announced within all of the midst of this. And I remember I was like, damn, that one's probably, a little less on my radar. But surprisingly, they made it work. And I can confirm this. This game works amazingly on Nintendo Switch 2. So this game was initially announced in Summer Game Fest in 2025. It showed our new protagonist, Grace Ashcroft, played by the great and lovely Angela Sant'Abano, which is perfect because obviously the audience needed to be introduced to the newest protagonist in the series. I'm not saying that you should not show us Leon doing cool kicks, but I'm just saying at the same time, I feel like it was a good move from Capcom to show us the new character. It was. And at the time, of course, there were some rumblings about a character returning from past series. We all know who that was. And having a dual-sided story, that person obviously was rumored to be Leon, but nah, they wouldn't do that right now, right? They wouldn't. That's what I was thinking at the time. I was like, there's no way that they can do this, right? Nah, there's no way. The next trailer then followed up in September of 2025, now giving us more of the world and just showing us more gameplay of Grace, the characters, just everything in general, just her mom. And I remember a lot of people going crazy when Alyssa Ashcroft, Grace's mom, kind of came into the scene. I was like, who is this? And then I remember, oh my God, yeah, Outbreak. I never played that game. I still had to play that. I never played it. And then it's funny because if you actually go back into those trailers, you'll actually see Leon's portion there. Like, Capcom has a way with it. And then oh my God, I almost forgot. I remember people were also showing that when the logo came on, like when it said the title at the end of the trailer, you can actually see that it said Leon upside down. So Capcom was just going crazy, man. I don't like why even try at this point? And then I remember in between this, the Nintendo Switch 2 version was obviously being shown more and more, with only the Grace portions of the game being shown off. And again, a lot of us thought that this was going to be a very compromised version of the game, but that actually did not end up being true. A lot of the time, this was a just magnificent port of a game that could actually run fine on Nintendo Switch 2. Capcom social media wasn't even slowing down at this point either. If you actually saw a lot of the time on their TikTok, Twitter, I mean, they were literally posting everywhere about this game. If you looked on social media and you followed a Resident Evil person or just like Capcom in general, Resident Evil was most likely on there. It was always being shown. And then obviously this left me with one of the craziest and one of my favorite trailers of all time being shown off. Leon S. Kennedy coming out of that Porsche. Okay, the black Porsche, the electric music playing, kicking, shooting, one-liners were going crazy. I mean, this trailer was absolutely insane. I remember making a whole live stream about this, and yeah, it was a time, man. This was revealed at the Summer Game Fest Game Awards. Game Awards. This was being shown off at the Game Awards in December of 2025. And at the time I was thinking, like, unfortunately, I wasn't really too much into video games. Like, I was in a weird situation because right now I'm still currently in college, but even then I was still in college. I was in my first half of my junior year. I just remember I'm like, I love this game so much, but I don't think I'm ever going to really have time to play it because I'm so much into school. Funny enough, I actually ended up playing it the entire way through, even during tests and all that. So it goes to show you that I'm actually cool. I was actually able to play this game a lot. I had nothing to worry about. And then this takes us to the fourth trailer. And obviously talking about this now, I already knew about the strategy. But at the time, it took me until the fourth trailer to just kind of understand the strategy that was going on with Capcom here. Capcom was definitely being strategic with this entire process of promoting and marketing Resident Evil 9. I mean, it was quite literally an event, not just a game launch. So the way that it kind of went was you have four main trailers, right? Each of them being revealed at a very specific event, most likely Game Awards or, like I said, Summer Game Fest. And just packing in as much as you possibly can with social media posts, interviews, content creators, events. Like I remember even the Porsche one coming out. I think it was during, or no, it was actually a couple of days before the game actually released. And people just had so much fun with that. And I remember I'm like, I want to go there. I want to ride the Porsche, man. I want to ride the Porsche. But yeah, so they had the four trailers and they packed as much as they can in between those trailers. And I think that's pretty much the key is like when you have a game coming out and you truly care about the release window of that game. Not that I'm saying that some people who, because obviously it takes a lot of time, but what I'm trying to say is that the way to do this is consistency and content. A lot of the time when it comes to gaming companies, they don't really realize this and they have major gaps in between trailers or posts and they just kind of do it the wrong way. But with Capcom, it just ends up being they knocked it out of the park. They had trailer after trailer after trailer, post after post after post, interview. You get the point. And I even forgot to mention that this fourth trailer was actually one of the more important ones as well because it showed us Leon going back to Raccoon City. And that was the money shot. That was everybody blew up after that. The game eventually released on February 27th, 2026, with it selling 5 million copies the first day of launching. This made it the fastest selling game in the entire series. If that doesn't display what Capcom can do with consistency and quality, I really don't know what does, man, because that is amazing. Before we get into the future plans, I gotta give my shout outs to the entire team. Just everybody who is working on this, all the content creators, all of the people who were just kind of promoting this game, the people who literally made the game, the people who were talking about the game, etc. Like everything, all the way to the people up at Capcom. This was an amazing ride, and you guys definitely did it if that wasn't already noticeable. So Capcom has clearly showed that they can have the sauce. They know what it takes to make a quality game, make it fun at that too, but overall, they know it now. They have the science to it, and that's what's important. That's kind of the focus of this, is that Capcom knows what they're doing. A lot of the time when you look at other gaming companies, you don't see this. They don't have transparency, they don't have the communication, they don't even have the ability to post on social media, which is crucial. A lot of now it's funny because now you see a lot of the other companies doing this now. All of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, let's start posting on social media, and it's like, you guys should have been doing this before. Capcom set that standard. So following from their inconsistent and undefiable past to their present, where in my opinion they're basically single-handedly carrying the entire industry and just showing the standard on how to release consistently quality projects along with strategic revealings leading up to the release of a game. But the question is, where do they go from here? There's a lot of rumors going around with Code Veronica or RE5 being remade, and one of my personal favorites, which is, set in stone, Mega Man 12. Cannot wait for that. The company has already stated that they want to make all of their franchises mainline, and as long as they can configure those reveals with the way that they did with Requiem, I'm pretty sure that they can make this happen. I mean, I think, again, Capcom just has the sauce. They know what they're doing. They are able to make each and every part of their series, their franchises, their IPs good. I mean, look at Pragmata. That is blowing up right now as, it's doing good. It's doing good. Capcom, in my opinion, is at the top of the gaming industry in terms of the reputation, pro-consumer choices, and consistent quality across most, if not all, of their projects. And I hope to see them reach even higher heights than what they're doing right now, honestly. I just wanted to say thank you, Capcom. Thank you for making consistently good games that everybody can kind of get into at an easy and comfortable pace. I genuinely have enjoyed all of your guys' games ever since the inception of my viewing of the Resident Evil series, all the way back when in Resident Evil 7. When I first played that game, as I said before, I remember I couldn't even get through that game. And I remember in high school, I went back to it and I faced my fears and I was able to finish it. So many of your guys' games got me through tough times. And that's the truth. A lot of times when you look at gaming as like just a hobby, to me, it's not just a hobby. I don't know what really to call it, but gaming is something that I really look at as an opportunity, not just as a hobby. And again, that is the truth. This is a company that genuinely means a lot to me. And I know that you guys have other IPs beyond just Resident Evil, but Resident Evil is that series that genuinely helped me. It gave me something to work with when I had nothing else beside me. So again, thank you guys. I appreciate it, Capcom. Thank you to Capcom, the people who are promoting the game, right? I'm sure you guys have different departments. Thank you to all of the content creators that have just made this road, this process even possible. And thank you for giving me the inspiration to even start this channel and even talking about it. Thank you. And much respect to all of you guys too. I know how much work that takes. I don't know how much work that takes, and I'm assuming it's a very tough and excruciating project to try and make this as perfect as possible. You can't make anything perfect, but honestly, in my eyes, this launch was perfect. That's about it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you guys if you guys are watching on your guys' own time. Have yourselves an amazing day.